It was a hot day, and the line to the theater was quite long as we stood and waited to go inside. My father told me, he said, "Don't worry, the wait will be worth it." We finally went inside, got our drinks and our popcorn, and sat in our seats, and the theater darkened. And the musical theme began to play. A musical theme that would burn itself into my brain for all eternity as the opening credits scrolled at the screen. And then suddenly there were spaceships. There were laser blasts. There were soldiers. There were stormtroopers. There was Darth Vader. And then suddenly, I saw it. It's a lightsaber, to quote. The weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. Obi-Wan Kenobi, May 25th, 1977, Star Wars, A New Hope. If any of you have ever seen Star Wars, you can well imagine why I might have picked this as my cultural artifact. I could have picked, say, a wand from Harry Potter, a science book, the One Ring from Lord of the Rings. But I chose what I and many nerds consider to be one of the ultimate symbols of nerd culture. I'm a nerd. I'm a science-loving, sci-fi and fantasy reading and watching and playing nerd. And I'm here to tell you guys today about nerd culture. First, we're going to start with the definition of what it means to be a nerd and the ways that I might be a nerd. And then we're going to move on to the symbolism of the lightsaber. And then finally, we'll talk about what the lightsaber means to me and my culture. How many of you have seen Star Wars? How many of you think that you might be a nerd? And for that matter, what does it mean to be a nerd? Well, according to dictionary.com, nerd is a descriptive term often used pejoratively to describe somebody who's either overly intellectual, obsessive, or lacking in social graces. Often these people can be found with highly obscure or highly technical information, often relating to either a technical field or to science fiction or fantasy, and excluding themselves from the mainstream activities. So to follow this definition then, anybody with high knowledge of any subject, technical or otherwise, could possibly be a nerd. So to follow that then, there are many different types of nerds. You have your book nerds, your computer and gamer nerds, you have your fantasy and fiction nerds, you have your science and research nerds, and your massive combinations of all those. Now, it wasn't always okay to be a nerd. There was a time when people would ridicule, bully, laugh at, and pick on people just because they were smart and just because they were different. But thanks to pioneers in places like Silicon Valley and people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Steve Wozniak, just to name a few, it has now become more acceptable than ever to be a nerd. Now, as for the ways that I'm a nerd, I love science. I love astronomy and geology. My love for these sciences was inspired by Star Wars and by science fiction in general, which has given my imagination many wonderful places to play, and still does. Some of my credits can be, I'm an expert in Harry Potter. I'm an expert at Lord of the Rings, of course Star Wars, Star Trek, many other books and movies. For my gamer credentials, the list is so long, talk to me after class. Now, how many of you would like to own an actual, real lightsaber? How many of you think that if you actually owned a real lightsaber, you would cut off your hand or worse within the first 5 minutes of owning one? When Lucas created the lightsaber, little did he know the iconic weapon and symbol he would be creating. Lucas loved archetypes, and they were inspired by his mentor and friend, Joseph Campbell. In an interview with Bill Moyers, who was an American political journalist and a former White House press secretary, he is asking George Lucas about who his mentors were. And Lucas would list his father and director Francis Ford Coppola. And then he would go on to call Joseph Campbell, who he referred to as Joe, as his last or final mentor. Campbell had this idea of of archetypes in a story. That the hero covered all the that the hero is made up of a basic set of archetypes in any story. Lucas would follow this set of archetypes in the writing of Star Wars in the building of his hero. And his hero had to have, one of the archetypes was a powerful or magical weapon. So, then we have many colors and styles of lightsabers. You know, you have your blue, your green, your red, etc., any rainbow of colors. Then you have your styles of lightsabers. You have your regular straight saber. You have a double-weighted saber. You can have a cross-hilted saber, Kylo Ren. You can have a curved saber, Count Dooku. And just about any other combination of weapon you can think of can be turned into a lightsaber. Now, what does this lightsaber mean to me in my culture? Well, this saber, the bright blade represents the bright minds within nerd culture. The changing colors, the variety of colors, represents the vast amount of variety of knowledge within nerd culture. The constant hum represents a nerd's mind, always in motion. The flash on flash, and the blaster deflection represents us deflecting criticism and bullying and turning those weapons back on their oppressors. And finally, the lockup. This feature is when nerds debate each other. This is when we feel our passions and we debate each other strongly. So, to close in the review, we talked about what it means to be a nerd in nerd culture, in ways that I'm a nerd. We talked about the symbolism of the lightsaber, and then we also talked about what the lightsaber means to me in my culture, as a symbol of truth that cuts away all, leaving just the truth behind. And so, to close, I'm a nerd, a science-loving, science fiction and fantasy reading and watching and playing nerd. And I'd like to leave you with just this, from the Jedi Code. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. And there is no death, there is the Force. Thank you. Vader's balls.
Where'd you get this?
$500.
That's what I said.
I mean, that wasn't from like Toys R Us?
Oh no.
Still recording.
Go running.
I'm gonna be like.